All right, what's up, everybody? Can you guys hear me okay? Look at that. The bot should be live. We are multi-streaming as always, except we are now also streaming on Rumble, if you guys see that. If you guys are checking out alternate platform, we're also posting and streaming out to there, and it looks actually pretty damn good. So, anyways, we do have a couple of things. So, I am going to pull the winner for the July giveaway, and I already have all the names pulled. So we're going to go ahead and pull those right now. We're just going to jump right into it. So let's see. All right. Hopefully my main monitor. Hang on. I got to check first, because I think it's on the wrong screen. Yes, it is. Because remember last time we had no power. So I had to switch it. So, all right, let's go ahead and switch over here. And I got all the entries here for July. And I think there was one stream because the power being out, I didn't have time to actually go ahead and make a new form. So there is a new form up. So if you guys go to giveaway.th3dstudio.com, you can enter our giveaway. And that entry is open during the stream and for a couple hours after. So you can only enter during the stream time, basically. So let's go ahead and see who won this month's giveaway, or last month's giveaway. This is for July. All right, who won the $100 gift card? Oh, Emerson. I know Emerson. I know how to get a hold of you. Emerson's a regular around here. So Emerson, you just won a $100 gift card. So I'm going to go ahead and just make a note of that here. Where's my marketing chat? I'll just put in the run command and leave it over here. All right, so Emerson, you are the winner for July. You guys need to go ahead and leave questions in the chat. That's what the point of this is. The bot is working. Again, the bot only works on YouTube, but I do have people monitoring the other channels. So if you guys post a question, somebody should grab it and cross-post it back to the new channel, or to the YouTube channel, so the bot can pick it up. So anyways, questions you can ask are anything related to FDM 3D printing. I don't do resin, I only do FDM. Before we get into the, before we get into the questions, I like to cover new stuff, and I have one note here that is talking about the easy bulbs. So we have easy bulbs in stock. That's what's in these little guys behind me. You can see the lights there. There's actually a command to change them if you guys are privy to it. Like you can type a command in chat on YouTube and the bot will change it. So, but we do have easy bulbs. I don't have a box handy. We talked about them last time, but if you guys are home automation people, you're looking for a open source bulb, meaning you're not going to have to flash it with any firmware. These come pre-flashed with test mode and all the source code's available. So you can actually qualify and check. There's a box. Yeah, Krista has the box. There's no bulb in here because they're in the lights behind me. But we got a nice box here for them. And basically, if you are into home automation, these are highly recommended. So the one thing I will say is if you guys are just getting started in home automation, a lot of people start out with like the Google Homes or the Amazon Alexa devices. These will not work directly with those devices. You would have to have something in between. What I do is I have these talk to an open source project that runs on like a Raspberry Pi or an Intel NUC, or if you have a home lab and you can run virtual machines, I have a virtual machine image. But basically these talk to the home automation platform, and then the home automation platform can do the talking between your Google Home Cloud and the Amazon Echo service. So the benefit of this is there's nothing phoning home to any other servers. This is all local controlled, so you don't have to worry about any backdoors. You can look at the source code and check it yourself. If you want to flash something else on there, these have standard ESP8285, or also known as 8266 type chipsets. So these are really nice, and they give you just a lot of flexibility with taking control of your devices. I don't like having my stuff out in the cloud as much as possible. So, all right. Let's see. I see somebody whining about Rumble and Odyssey. If you think that having less options for people to view content is a bad thing, then you need to take a look in the mirror. We've been posting on Odyssey for a while. Odyssey is actually a blockchain platform that's really cool. So all of they don't have Livestream fully working on Odyssey last time I checked, but we've been cross-posting there, and it also is nice because we technically now have a backup of all our videos. So when we post a video on YouTube, it actually go out to Odyssey and Rumble, so we can then also have an archive of the videos. So it's kind of nice. All right, let's see what questions we have here. Lights in the light cubes are not changing. They should be. I'll have to look into that later. That's a home automation or home assistant automation, and I did some updating, so maybe I possibly broke something. I'm just going to take a quick peek and see if it's not calling. It says it's calling the up button. Oh, I see why the light is not working. I can fix that really quick. All right, light on, and that should fix the lights. The cube should be working. So go ahead and try to change the lights. You should be able to change the lights to green. It should work now. I'm just checking my... Yeah, there we go. So, yeah, the entity names changed when I did some updating, so I had to update the entity. So if you notice, I also moved things around behind me. I got the flag a little up higher because I got a little monitor set up here. So when someone else, usually Krista's using her laptop here, I got a USB-C dock and they can dock. So I figured, you know what, I'm going to move these up so you guys can actually see the stuff better instead of being more cluttered. So anyways, Justin, I just addressed the light in the cube not working. Okay, so who's the first question? It's Jonathan Barnes. Jonathan Barnes says, my Inter5 Plus stopped me on 7 hours into a print. The temp showed 210 on the hot end and 60 on the bed, but both were cold. So I'm assuming there's no errors. The other question would be, would you be, are you printing over USB? Are you printing over SD? Like, what is the method you're printing? And if you press the control button, I'm assuming you probably shut it down. If you press like the control knob on your printer, I don't know if you're using the stock screen and firmware or not. If you are, then it could just be the firmware. The stock firmware and the stock touchscreen on those printers are pretty bad, but if you're using our conversion kit, which has a rotary knob, and this is in general, if your printer locks, stops and it's weird, if there's no refreshing on the screen, you press the button on your screen and it doesn't change screens, it usually is an indicator that the board is locked up. In that case, I would say it might be an issue with the board, but it looks like Jonathan says it's stock. There's a lot of stability issues with the stock Ender 5 Plus firmware, mainly because of how they integrate the LCD. I haven't had the stock LCD on mine for years. Basically, a couple weeks after I did the stream on this, I replaced it with the 128/64 screen. So, all right. But yeah, it could be just something as simple as the screen locked up. The thing that not a lot of people realize, and this is one of the reasons why we aren't able to do much with what's the word I'm looking for, with the stock screens that are those touch screens, is they actually run their whole own operating system and firmware, and it talks to the your control board basically over a serial line. So it's not like the standard 128/64 screens where those LCDs are being driven directly from the printer's processor. So the firmware that's on your printer is actually driving the screen when you have a 128/64. Whereas if you have a touch screen, or even like the color screens on like the Ender 3 S1, or the Ender 3 V2, where it's those colors that also have an SD card, those are running a completely separate firmware. So you have two different firmwares at play. So if there's an issue on one, the other one is probably not going to be aware of it because there's really not much communication between the two. And if one just stops, basically if the LCD stops, it's just going to lock up, and the board's still going to be running. So if you plugged USB, you might be able to get a terminal open and get information over that, like you send G-code commands. But I would check and see if like you can update the firmware. There is one guy that's been doing a lot of work on the touchscreens. His name's Dave over at Insanity Automation. He has firmware for the LCDs where he's been able to not do it from source, but kind of hack it and modify the existing firmware along with a modified version of Marlin to go along with those. He's actually the guy who does the firmware for Tiny Machines. So you can try that if you don't want to change the hardware out. But it sounds like the screen just kind of locked up, would be my guess. And if that happens again, what I would do is plug your USB cable into the printer and see if you can establish serial communications to it. And if you can, that means the board itself is still running and the issue is going to be lying on the LCD. Again, you now have two separate independent systems that are just talking over a serial communication line when you have those color touchscreens and a standard board. It's just one more point of failure is the point I'm getting at, but it sounds like something locked up. If the hot end was cold, and the bed was cold, it sounds like the touchscreen might have just locked up and the board kind of fail-safe and shut itself down. The only way you'd be able to tell is if you had it hooked up to serial and if it's responding. If the serial connection isn't responding, like you plug in your computer and you're not getting anything, it's possible that the board locked up. So, but yeah. Let's see. So hopefully that gives you some idea. I would probably try, if you don't want to change out the screen, I would try going over to Insanity Automation's GitHub. Just search Insanity Automation GitHub. You should find his DWin branch, and he has firmware for that. You can try it. It's a lot better than stock. It's not as many features and not as refined as like switching out the LCD, but it's better than nothing. It's better than stock. So Paul the Texan says, I'm getting oozing with PETG unless I turn the temp down so much that it doesn't flow right. Is there anything else to adjust besides temp? I get 15 to 20 millimeters oozing out of an idle hot end at temp. So PETG, once it hits its melting point, does get very like very drippy and goopy. It's very liquidy and viscous, I think is the word I think I'm looking for. The key I found to making sure that there's no oozing, especially during a print, is fast travel moves. So you're limiting the time between the printer not printing when it's traveling from point A to point B on a print, and fast retractions. We're talking like 100 millimeter second retractions. So very quick retractions. Typically with PETG, I run anywhere from 245 to 250. Most PETGs do require a hotter print temp, sometimes even hotter than ABS. But in general, PETG is a very like liquidy, viscous material, which is why it's more prone to straining. It's a good material because it's higher temp resistance than PLA, but it is a more viscous material, especially at temperature. So I found doing fast retractions and doing fast moves, travel moves when you're setting up your slicer. I think I have my travel moves set at 120 millimeters a second for my XY travel moves for PETG. Seems to help a lot. The other thing too is if your PETG is really wet, PETG tends to pick up moisture more than PLA and ABS. So try drying it. That can make a huge difference. So give that a try. So hopefully some of that information helps. So fast retractions, and make sure you're retracting enough. I do notice, like, for example, if I have, like, on a Bowden system, if I'm running like 4mm retraction for PLA, I'll usually find I have to go up to, like, 5.5 to 6 for PETG. Again, the speed is key there. And if you're running our unified firmware, we actually used to have the max speed on E set to 50, and a couple versions back, we actually bumped that up to 100, so you guys have a little more headroom. Now, depending on what extruder you have, your motor currents and everything, 100mm might cause the extruder to skip. So go ahead and try different things and try different speeds and make sure everything is running. So if you set it to 100mm a second and you hear like the motor stall out, like kind of make like a noise, that means you're going too fast. And you can overcome that by increasing the current going to the motor. If you're on like a board like our Easy board where you have digital control over the actual motor current, you can just go on the LCD and bump it up a little bit. On other boards where there's manual adjustment, you have to get out your multimeter and a precision screwdriver set and manually bump it up. If you have one of those boards where it's manual adjustment, I recommend going up by like 0.1 volts. Or just slow it down. So basically, you're going to have to do some trial and error and find out what the max speeds you can safely run and reliably run on your machine. So hopefully that works. Let's see. So 3D Experience says, I tried a 0.6 nozzle and got way over extrusion using the same slicer profile, but with 0.6 nozzle selected in Cura. Is this typical? Where should the adjustment for flow be made? Slicer, E-steps, etc. So I run 0.6s. Actually, this printer here, my Ender 5 Plus and the Daedalus here, those both have 0.6 nozzles. Now, typically, from my experience, I still use exclusively Simplify 3D for my slicing, even though some people are like, "Oh my God, it's old." It works, so that's why we keep using it. But anyways, it's usually been just as simple as changing the nozzle setting. Now, for your adjustments, your E-step should really never change. Okay, they shouldn't. So basically, if your E-steps on your printer are calibrated, meaning you tell it to extrude 100mm of filament, and you get 100mm of filament, you're done. Don't mess with the E-steps. At that point, then you would want to change your flow rate in your slicer. So just for example, let me pull up Simplify 3D. And the reason I mention this is a lot of people will tell people to modify their E-steps to compensate for under extrusion. And you technically can do this, but it's not the correct way to do it because 100mm is 100mm. If you're getting under extrusion or over extrusion, you want to address this in your slicer. So if I go to my Simplify 3D profile, you see I have Ender 5 Plus. This is my 0.3 layer height profile. You see my nozzle diameter is 0.6. This is my PLA profile, and you can see I'm using an extrusion multiplier of 0.9. So I'm not using 100%. I'm not using 100% extrusion multiplier on PLA. I found most PLAs, when your E-steps are properly calibrated, you don't use a 100% or a 1 extrusion multiplier. So think about this in percent. So 0.9 would be 90%, 1 would be 100%, 1.1 would be 110%. Etc. So, but if we go here and we look at like my PETG profile, you can see here I'm actually running a 1.02 multiplier because PETG needs a little more flow rate than PLA. And then on ABS here, you can see I'm using a 1.0. So different materials. In my experience, I found ABS usually uses about 100% flow rate. PLA usually uses about 90% flow rate. And PETG can be anywhere from like 100 to 110% based on the PETG you're using and the rest of your setup. Because PETG, like we talked about earlier, is a very oozy, viscous material. So just trial and error. I mean, there's no simple way to be like, change this setting and you'll get better prints. 3D printing is like a lot of trial and error, and that's just how it is. So, know that going into it. But hopefully these tips, like this is just my experience of using the printers. The other thing too is I found using a manually specified extrusion width in my slicer also yields cleaner prints because sometimes the slicers will vary it too much and then you get too much variation. I prefer to lock my extrusion width into the nozzle size. You can go up or down. So like if I hit auto here, you can see it's going to want to do a 0.72mm extrusion width and it'll vary it. So I'm going to go ahead and change that back so I don't mess my profile up. But yeah, so those are the settings I use. But basically, any adjustments in terms of flow rate. So if you're getting gaps, if your E-steps are calibrated and you're getting gaps or over extrusion in your prints, then you want to mess with the flow rate in your slicer. So if you're getting over extrusion, you're going to want to drop the flow rate down. So let's say you're getting over extrusion and you're at a 1.0 flow rate. Try dropping it down to like, not or 0.95 or 95%, and then run a print. If you're getting gaps, try bumping it up by 5%. Again, trial and error. The prints I like to do, like obviously the benchies are nice. The other thing I'd recommend is doing like the Cali Cats or the Cali Dogs. Those are really small prints. They're little 20 millimeter by 20 millimeter prints, and they're about, I don't know, 25, 30 millimeters high. So they're really nice. But again, trial and error. And then jot down your settings. What I'll usually do is when I'm trying to tune out an issue, I will put in the file name, PETG E5P for Ender 5 Plus or whatever print I'm working on, whatever abbreviation that makes sense to me, and then jot down like, 95 PCT. So I know this is a PETG slice one with 95% flow rate for this printer. And that helps you kind of keep track of what's going on and how things are working. So it also helps you figure out what settings worked and what didn't. I'll also usually take like a Sharpie and write on there, if I'm tuning flow rate, I'll usually write the percentage. I'll flip the part over and write the percentage on the part with a like a black Sharpie on there. So, but yeah, no, you're typically not going to see over extrusion. You shouldn't see over extrusion with going from a 0.4 to a 0.6 nozzle, and that's all you change. Something else might be going on. So Thomas says, how do you do your retract distance and speed test? I'll just run a simple print, set it, and then listen to the printer and watch it. Make sure everything's moving correctly. If I'm losing steps, I'll usually bump the current up a little bit on the motor. And then if I'm getting, too many wispies, or stringing is the word I'm looking for, I'll go ahead and just, again, note what I did and try upping the retraction. Now, here's the thing, and I'm going to shout out to our print farm tech, Sean. When you guys are doing direct drive, if you guys are getting small little gaps on your extrusion, that's actually a sign that you're retracting too much. To give you an idea, when I converted, I just put our multi-mount system with our Tough Extruder V2 on here, which is on sale right now. If you guys are looking for an upgrade, they're on sale until the 14th of this month. We just sent it out in our newsletter this week. And then I went from a Bowden system to a direct drive. So I had a 7mm retraction rate when I was running a Bowden on that machine. Now that I'm running direct drive, I'm down to 0.7 millimeters of retraction. So if you're getting like little tiny gaps in your extrusion and you went to direct drive, drop your retraction down. You're probably retracting too much. I had really bad gaps when I dropped it down from 5. I was like, 2 millimeters is going to be fine. I need to go way down. So just keep an eye on that. There are plenty of like test prints you can get on Thingiverse and other places, but I do a lot of the stuff manually. I've actually never printed a temp tower. I've been printing for 6, almost 7 years now. I have never printed a temp tower ever. I see people that do it a lot, and those are useful, but I just do a quick little print and do it that way. Spun says are we gonna do a Easy Flex 2 for the Bamboo Lab Carbon X1? That'd be something we could do. I would just have to get their existing plates to like draw the template that we'd have to have them cut. We don't have plans for it, but I do know a couple people that have them. I'm assuming they're going to be selling their own. So if they're a much bigger backed company than us, those guys are all DJI people. So I'm assuming they have a lot more funding than we do. So I don't know if we'd be able to compete with them on price. But yeah, I mean, we could do it if someone wants to get us a plate or make the drawing. I don't have any interest in buying that printer because it's not really our target market. That printer is more for people who are like buying Ultimakers, that kind of thing, stuff that's like ready to go out of the box. It's a very, restricted, this is the printer, you use it stock, you don't modify it. If something breaks, you put the OEM parts in a type of machine. That's not the kind of machines we deal with here. So I don't think we're going to be doing very much with those at all, to be completely honest. So all right. Julio Reyes says, I just started printing ABS on Ender 6 with a Vision Mire. It's really fusing my flex plate pretty tough. I used a razor to scrape off the small parts that didn't release. So what I found is if you are getting too much adhesion, take the vision miner, especially if your bottle's low, thin it out with 99% isopropyl alcohol, and that'll make it a little less intense. You could also put just a little bit on and put some alcohol in there and mix it up. But in general, if it's sticking too much, raise your Z height a little bit and print a little bit further away. So I found it's really bad if I don't check my first layer and I'm just a hair too close, then it really is going to stick on there. The easiest thing I found, and this is, you guys might laugh, is to get something off your plate, especially on a textured plate, is print just a simple couple layer tall flat piece over that spot, something that's like bigger, and usually it'll pull off whatever is left on there. Like a good example is like if you have a skirt or a brim around your prints, those are usually one layer height, and most of the time, especially after it's cooled, I can just peel them off. Like, they do stick. But if I have one where it was really embedded in there because my Z height was too close on that first layer, I'll reprint over it, and basically it'll bond that little piece that's stuck to the bed to the bigger part, and then you just take that part off. So yeah, hopefully that helps a little bit. Let's see here. So Shania says, other than the Corelli S5, what 500 by 500 by 500 printer do you suggest? I don't actually have any recommendations. There's not much in that build envelope unless you're doing something custom. If anybody in chat has any recommendations, let me know. But that's the only one that comes to mind. There's not too much in that build volume, especially for the price. Like the S5, even though the heated bed sucks and you basically have to use a Kinovo heater with it to get the most out of that machine, there's really not many other options that aren't insanely expensive. So yeah, I don't know if anybody has any other inputs here, but I'm just checking chat to see if anybody posted any other recommendations. I can't think of any. I think maybe some of the form bots, don't some of the form bots go up to that size? I think Tiny Machines carries the form bots. I don't know if they go up to the 500. 3D Experience says 500 cube, the Rat Rig V3. That's a DIY kit. I have heard good stuff about the Rat Rigs, and I've seen a couple of the smaller models in person. They look very solid. But I haven't printed and built one myself. So 3D Experience says, thoughts on powering the Raspberry Pi from the printer, control board, or buck converter, and connecting to the printer's board via GPIO. I'm trying to minimize the wire clutter. So I don't recommend, so you can power them from a buck converter. Just make sure you get something that's 3 amps output, and you're going to want something that's potentially adjustable, because you're going to actually want to give it about 5.1 volts, because if you actually check and meter out any of the power adapters that are for the Pis, including the official ones and even the ones we sell, they put out about 5.1 volts to compensate for voltage drop. The only downside to powering it from the printer is that if you, like myself, if you notice, all my printers are off right now. That's because they're on the Wi-Fi, outlets, the easy plugs. So if you have a Pi that's powered from the printer and you want the power to be shut down, you basically have to do a timed shutdown to have the Raspberry Pi shut down and send a delayed command to the plug. Now, luckily, Tasmota has a built-in timer, and I think Derek, I don't know if he's watching, but Derek Cirillo is one of our customers. He actually found that there is a command where Tasmota, you can tell it, hey, shut this plug down after a minute. So basically, it'll send the command, the Pi will send the command to the plug will start the timer, and then the Pi has a 1 minute to shut down. And then that gives the Pi time to safely shut down. So that's why I don't do it. I actually power my Raspberry Pis from either a wall adapter, or I actually have what are called PoE splitters. So I have PoE network switches, and if you guys don't know what PoE is, it stands for Power over Ethernet. So basically, my one network cable not only gives my Pi data, but it also gives it power. And there's quite a bit of adapters. We actually carry adapters in our shop to go from a PoE, and then it gives you from the one network plug from your PoE switch, a USB-C plug and a network plug, and they work really well. So yeah. But let's see. So yeah, I personally wouldn't connect the Pi via GPIO to the printer's control board, because most printers, their serial connection is going to go through a USB to serial converter, so you're going to be soldering directly onto those pins. I wouldn't recommend that, but you technically could do it. I don't think it's worth the trouble, because then also repairing and upgrading down the line is going to be more of a hassle, because you got, you know, stuff soldered on. You know, the USB to serial is what I would recommend to do. Just use a standard USB port. So just less variables to deal with, the better, in my opinion. Ninja says, do you have any advice on compiling Marlin IDEX printer? I tried looking up, but I can't find any good material. If you have any material to point me the right direction, that'd be great. So unfortunately, IDEX is still a very niche topic. You could probably find some example configs on the Marlin website to see. I don't know if you guys are aware of this, but Marlin has example configs for quite a bit of printers. Now, not all of them work all the time. I will say that up front. But they do have example configs. So I'm going to go to the Marlin GitHub here. I'm going to go to configurations. And then if you guys go in here, you can actually see there's examples. So you could look up another printer that would have an IDEX one. I think, what is the word I'm looking for? I think, was it Hicktop? Are there any Hicktop ones in here? I'm trying to think of who has an IDEX machine that would possibly be in here. I'm just thinking. I'm looking through here to see if anything rings a bell. But if you're trying to compile something, I would look at existing configs to see. I have not set up an IDEX machine. I'm trying to remember. I don't think Creality has any. Oh, yeah, Solval. Let's see what's in the Solval folder. It looks like there's just the SVO1 in here. That's it. Yeah. That's all that's in there. Let's see what's in 2.0. Are there any more configs in 2.0? I don't think I can search. Let's see. In this repository. Yeah, I think it's just going to hit on these IDEX commands here. I don't think it's going to actually search by that. I don't think there's any... There might be any IDEX ones. You have to go through here. But basically, try to find something that is similar to what you're using and build off of that to give you an idea of what kind of stuff they're using. I'm trying to remember... did CTC have any? No. I'm surprised there's no Hicktop configs in here, because Hicktop had a dual one. I'm not seeing anything that's jumping out. I don't want to spend too much time on this, but let's just search like, let's do IDEX Marlin config. Let's see what comes up. Let's do a search here. That's Duet. This is Duet. Yeah, this is a very niche feature, so unfortunately it looks like you're probably going to have to... this would be a good fix. Someone said Ender 3 IDEX, so here we go. So raw Marlin IDEX files. This would probably be a good example to see what's going on. Let's see here. Come on, open up. You can do it. Let's see what options they have, because I'm very familiar with Marlin, but I have not built for an IDEX printer. What I would probably look here is see what IDEX options are on. There is no... Yeah, basically this is not going to be an easy thing. So, hey, Scott's in the chat. Maybe Scott has any tips on IDEX. I have not messed with IDEX printers in a long time. I had one. It was a Hicktop, and it was terrible. I gave up on it. I think I gave it away to one of our support guys. But sorry I can't be more help there. I was hoping I'd find an example config and I kind of walk you through it, but there's not. I think a lot of the IDEX settings are in the configuration advanced file, the configuration ADV file, if I'm correct. Yeah, the HipTalk 10log D3. Scott said he's searching, so we can circle back from that. Nemo Griff says, "Are you thinking about doing a roast soon? My workspace needs a clean out." We should. We are overdue. If you guys are not familiar, we have the Roast Me streams. We usually do at least one a year where everybody submits their crappy printer builds or, you know, their printer builds in general, and then we go over. I don't want that right now. Thank you. You just put it in the fridge. Just go over the builds and just criticize and be overly critical just for funsies. But yeah, we should definitely do one of those. Maybe I'm thinking probably September, so we can start collecting stuff. Scott says the Formbot T-Rex. Okay. So there's a Formbot T-Rex. I'm looking to see if there's an example config. Marlin. Formbot. Let's say example. And that's going to take me too long to get to. All right. Anyways, switch back over here. So Git SS says, are there pre-compiled firmware for your boards for an Ender 5 Pro with the BL Touch and high temperature printer? I want to get my machine set up for more serious business this year, and the 422 isn't good enough. So we actually do not provide any pre-compiled firmware for our control boards, and I'll show you why. Because it's insanely easy to do it. So if you have an easy board, you can go to easyfirmware.th3dstudio.com, and you know, you said he said Ender 5 Pro with BL Touch and high temp. So we have multiple options. So if you prefer to be more old school and have the file on your computer and then edit it there and upload it, we have that as an option here. If you want to just edit it right on the website, you can do that as well. Or what most people do is they do what's called the easy config, which is just a wizard. So you can literally just as simple as selecting your printer. So let's say you got a Ender 5. The 5 and the 5 Pro are the same setting. You want to check this if you have the newer lead screws. So if your Z steps are 800 steps per millimeter, you'll want to check this box. Most new machines will need this checked. The original, like, first couple batches used 400 steps per millimeter. And what this does, this will set the new one. So basically, I tell you, I got an Ender 5. You said you're using a BL Touch. So you would select BL Touch. You put your pin in. Now, by default, we put the EasyBoard V2 pin because that's what most people are compiling for these days. But we also have note here, these are the pin numbers for each of the boards. Now, since you have a BL Touch, you'd want to tell it that you're using a custom probe because these are all easy ABL mounts. Now, our board does support the BL Touch. You just have to do the custom probe. We don't actually have any preset probe options in there. But if you're using the stock metal bracket, if we go to the support site on our website, I'll just go to my test one because that's auto-completed. We do have the offsets in here for the BL Touch here. So did I not move that article over? I might not have moved that article over. I must not have. Let me go to our live one. This is the new help center that I'm still staging. So let's see. Metal BL Touch. Here we go. Creality BL Touch Probe Mount Offset. So if you're using this bracket like that looks like this, your offsets would be -44, -9. So I plug this in, -44, -9. And then that's it. So basically, I don't have to set anything else unless I'm modifying other things. So I can just click next, next, next. You can see here it built the config. I'm going to tell it this is for the EasyBoard V2. And then E5P plus BL Touch. This is just so I can find it later. And it'll submit it. So what's going to happen is this is actually going to compile this on our server here. And you don't have to touch anything. So it'll take about a minute for it to compile. So it's going to go into a queue and then it'll go into compiling state. You can see here it goes into compiling state and this will spit out the firmware. So you don't actually have to deal with VS Code or anything. This is being all done server side. And as far as something that's free, that's included with all the boards, and something that works like this, we're one of the only companies that offers this for our boards. There are third-party sites that are similar to this that came out after we put this out, but this is 100% free. If you have an EasyBoard version 1, version 2, you can access this and use this for free. If you want to go play with it right now, you can actually go ahead and do that as well. But you can see here, you have the firmware.bin file. You can just put this on your SD card, and that's it. Now, what I recommend doing, just so you remember what your settings are, you can also download the configuration.h file here, and then you just keep this in your folder. You can be like, okay, this is this is the config file. So you can see here, I now have this config file and I can save this so I remember what my settings are. So you can see here, here's the nozzle to probe offsets, all the other settings I had. So you can just keep that in a folder on your computer if you want to update later on. You know that these are the options you used before. So basically we keep the downloads here for, I think it's a week we have it set, so they will eventually go. And then the way you can find your thing is just by doing what's called a tag. So if you see here, I tag this E5P plus BL Touch, so I can actually search that and it'll come up with everything that is tagged with that. But if I type the whole thing, it should come up with just my one thing. So that's how you find your download. But again, this only stores the downloads for so long, and then they just kind of fall off. You can see here the oldest is August 2nd. And a lot of people use this. If we actually go here, you can see this server through the Easy Config Wizard has compiled almost 27,000 times firmware for people. The online editor has been used over 5,000 times, and the upload file has been used 4,100 plus times. So people use this who have our boards, and this is just a value add. We literally pay to run a server that does this for you guys, and we think it's important to, provide this for our customers because this makes it a hell of a lot easier. You never have to touch any code. We could potentially turn this into something we can monetize, being, like we could sell like credits for other boards, but I don't have the time right now to code that or, coordinate that type of a project. So right now it's just as simple as, hey, we're the only ones that sell our easy board. This is limited to just our easy board. So, but it's a cool tool, and I use this. I don't even compile my own firmware for our easy board if I'm doing a printer build with it. I use the website. So, but yeah, and also if you have any questions, you can go ahead and, send our support team a message. We have live chat that's available from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Central Time, and you can also send a ticket. So if you're like, hey, what are my offsets? If you don't want to measure them, we could also remind you, hey, we do have an article here on our Sports Center. Here's your offsets for that probe. But yeah. So let's see. 3D Experience. Does anybody make a cable for the Creality 120/64 display? It's not a flat ribbon design. I'd like a longer coiled cable if possible. So I'm not aware of one. You could make one yourself if you wanted to by getting the ends. The only thing I will tell you is that the longer you go on these cables, the more chances you have for something getting corrupted, because these are being driven from the printer's LCD. So if you go too long, you might get display corruption because the signals are just not getting there and they're getting interference. If you are going to do something that's longer, I would highly recommend using a shielded cable and grounding it at either end. But I'm not aware of anybody that makes anything other than those flat 10-pin ribbon cables. Now, those are just standard. I think it's 2.54 millimeter pin pitch, just standard ribbon cable plugs. So you can find those raw plugs pretty easily online. Just check like eBay or, electronics parts suppliers like DigiKey or Mauser. They carry those 10-pin plugs, and then make your own. But, that's also going to be kind of a very manual thing. But I don't know of anybody that makes them. So Paul Texan, and this looks like the last question. If you guys got any other questions, if I run out of questions, I will wrap the stream up early. So let me know. Enter your questions now. So if you want your questions answered, put exclamation point Q in front of your question, and then the bot will pick it up. So Paul Texan says, if I got an EasyBoard V2 already, do I need the whole EasyABL kit or just the sensor? So any board, you need the whole kit. So the kit consists of two main parts: the actual EasyABL control board that drives the sensor, that gives the sensor power, it filters the power, and it also provides isolation of the higher voltage that the sensor runs on from your printer's end stop pins. So our sensor will run on 12 to 24 volts, but your control board, the I/O pins are either 3.3 volts typically if you have a 32-bit board, or 5 volts if you have an 8-bit board. Now, we have no electrical connection between the 12 to 24 volts that drives the sensor and your board. So that means if something happens, you short the kit out, you put AC power into it, your wire gets crimped and it shorts something out, there's no electrical connection, so it reduces any risk of damage to your control board. So, and that's what that board does. In addition to that, if you notice, there's also a bunch of capacitors on there that also provide power filtering to make sure that our sensors are getting clean, smooth power. And there's also what's called the reverse polarity protection, meaning the power, even if you hook it up backwards, it will not let the power flow in the wrong direction. And it also serves between the caps and the diode there, limiting the current, or limiting the power from only being able to enter one direction with the DC voltage. It also means that the printer board can't, the printer itself can't drain the voltage. So when you have your heaters going on and off, your power supply voltage is actually sagging a little bit. So when they, let's say you're at like 24 volts when everything's just idling, and the bed kicks on, your power supply might drop down to like 23.5 and then go back up. So your power is going like this. And what our control board does is it takes it's got a little electrolytic capacitor on there along with a bunch of ceramics for filtration. And it basically gives the sensor its own little, reserve of power to operate off of. So it's smooth, and that gives us more accuracy. So let's see, are there any more other questions? 3D Experiments is asking, are ABL offsets published from multi-mount STLs? Yes. Go into our support center and go to the multi-mount section. All the easy ABL offsets are documented there for all the probe versions. They're all there, so you don't have to measure them yourself. You can if you want to, but we've already done all that for you. TechDad47 is asking, I'm building an enclosure for my printer. Do you suggest some kind of liner to help hold the heat? So I have ones with no lining. You see here, they work well, but you can see this one's also insulated. If you want to insulate them, and I do recommend that, especially if the area you're in, your printer's in, is going to be something where the temperature is fluctuating a lot, especially if it's colder. If it's in a garage and it's starting to get cold, we are, getting towards the winter months soon here, going into fall. I really like, and you can pick this up at most hardware stores, there's sheets, and they usually come in rolls about 12 inches wide. It's a insulation with a foil backing, and it's self-stick, and I really like those. I think that's, in terms of an off-the-shelf, already ready to go type solution, that's what I go for. It's literally like a foil backed duct insulation. So it's usually what you would take that and wrap it around your duct work, for your HVAC system at home, but it works really well for printer enclosures. That's what I have in here, and that's been in there for almost 5 years, and it's not fallen down. It's just sticks, and it helps hold the heat, and it's relatively inexpensive. I think a whole roll, I think it's like 12 inches wide by 12 feet long, was like 20 or 30 bucks. That was pre-inflation, so it might be a little more now, but it's still a really good off-the-shelf product. So, all right, I don't have any other questions. I don't have any other updates, so if you guys don't have any other questions for me, we're going to wrap the stream up a couple minutes early, but not before giving Remo his dingo stick. Dingo stick? Dingo stick? You want a dingo stick right now? Does Remo want a dingo stick? Do you want a dingo stick? Yes, come here. Come here. Can you shake? Can you speak? Ooh, give me a big one. Oh, that's Mr. Wimpy Bark. Speak. Okay, close enough. All right, good boy. All right, guys. Well, I appreciate you guys stopping by. Hope you guys enjoyed the stream. We do these every Wednesday at 4 p.m. Central. I will be doing one next week, and it will be from a different location. So I will see you guys all in the next stream. Thanks for stopping by. And as always, happy printing. Take it easy, everybody.